Well, what's going on, everybody? Are we doing good? You sounding good. I heard three of you. The rest of y'all got to get it together. Hey, welcome to church. And hey, thanks for being here. How many of you know you could have been a million other places, but you came here? So let me be honest with you real quick. This is what I told first service. I figure I'll lead with this at this service too. You got up, right, when you didn't have to. You got ready when you didn't have to. Some of y'all fought with kids all the way to church when you didn't have to. So you went all in. So how about we go all in right now? Right, and let's figure out what God has for us, and let's be ready to get it. Don't just sit back, relax, and hang out and let it be another Sunday. You went through all you went through to get here, so let's make the most of it. Y'all good with that? Yeah? All right. So if we haven't met yet, my name is Eric, and along with my wife, Cheyenne, we get the honor of being the pastors here. And, man, we started a brand new series today called Thrive. And it's not really just a series, per se. If you're new to this whole series idea, it's we take a theme or a topic or a book of the Bible or something. We talk about it for a couple weeks till we get tired of talking about it. No, that's not true. Until you get tired of listening to it, that's more accurate, right? And then we move on to another series. But this whole series that we're moving into today has been really the theme of the whole year. We've been taking 2025 and we've been trying to move from just surviving to thriving. Y'all pay more attention than I think. That's awesome. Y'all are smart service right here. So we, like in every area though, like how do we thrive in parenting? How do we thrive in relationships? How do we thrive in our relationship with God? But this series is specifically targeted toward one area, and we're going to get to that area in just a little bit. But I want to set the stage. Right? I want to set the stage. I want to get us all on the same page for us to think, okay, it's a good idea to move from surviving to thriving. Does that make sense? And up front, it doesn't probably make any sense to you because you're like, who wouldn't want to thrive? And that's true. But here's what I know about your life and mine is we have areas of our lives that we are still barely surviving, and we don't want to do what it takes to move that area to where it is thriving. You see where I'm coming from now, right? So is it something worth fighting? Is it worth a battle going? Is it worth doing whatever we got to do to move this area that we're barely surviving in toward thriving, or should we just stay surviving? So I got to get you on the same page that I am going, yeah, good idea to move. Right? Would you say it's a good idea to move? Yeah. Okay, let's just play this out in our real life. So we survive traffic. Don't you think it'd be a good idea that they move? Yeah. Absolutely. We survive the drop off and pick up at the car line at school. Come on, how many of you know it'd be a good idea for them to move? Right? It'd just be a good idea. Hurry up, kid. Right? And you're getting so mad at like a 6-year-old, right, that don't even know how to tie their shoe yet, right? But you're like, get in the car already. Right? We don't like to survive in those moments. My kids, when it's my turn to cook, they survive my cooking. Have any of you been there before? Right? To where I'm sure they're going, hey, it's probably good for us to move to a restaurant. Right? So we don't even cook anymore. We barely go to the Dollar General for supper anymore. We just go out because I just can't do it. I don't know how. Or maybe I do and I just don't want to. Yeah, because it's hard to move. It's hard to move from surviving in that to thriving. I want to show you that you're not the first people to deal with this whole situation. This idea of it's hard to move every area of my life that is barely hanging on to where it is thriving. It's hard to do the things necessary for that to happen. Is it even worth it? You're not the first people to struggle with that. Right? And I'm grateful for Scripture because it is super relevant to every area of our lives that we find ourselves in right now. Right? And I know people say, well, the Bible's not relevant today. It's an old book, but those are people who don't read it. Right? Because if you read it, you're going, hold on, this is me right now. This is me. Right? So I want to catch you up. I'm going to take you to Exodus chapter 14, but I want to give you the backstory real quick. So the people of Israel have been in slavery for 400 years. Right, generations. We just sang that song. Generations. They've been in slavery, not knowing anything else but bondage and captivity. Right, so God goes, hey, I want to free my people. So he comes to this guy named Moses. He says, Moses, you go tell Pharaoh to let my people go. Thank you, the 3 people that went to Sunday school back in the day. You remember that song? Pharaoh, Pharaoh. Oh, Oh, baby, let my people go. Huh. See, some of y'all glad you didn't go to Sunday school, right? Just that right there. So he goes and talks to Pharaoh. It takes a little bit of persuasion, but God works a miracle, and Pharaoh lets the people go. And what should be now a walk of victory, right, turns into between a rock and a hard place. And here's what I'm going to relate it to our lives, because when they walked out of Egypt, they were going, this is fantastic. This is amazing. They get to the Red Sea. Pharaoh changes his mind, so he runs after them. A whole army of people coming behind them. So now they're looking at nowhere to go ahead of them and death coming behind them. Right? And they make this statement. I want you to see what they say. Verse 12 of Exodus 14. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. Now, some of y'all read that verse a million times, but have you actually thought about what that says? It would have been better for us to stay captive and addicted and in bondage to whatever had us held captive than for us to die trying to get free from whatever held us. Are you tracking? That's the statement. And that's where it relates to your life and mine. We are still stuck in certain areas of our lives. We're still stuck in captivity when God goes, hey, here's how you get free. But we're still looking at the work ahead going, is freedom worth it, or should I just go back to what I'm used to? So I would say that the reason that the majority of us are still stuck in just survival mode isn't because we don't want to walk into freedom. It isn't because we don't know how to walk into freedom. It's that we just feel like it's more comfortable to stay bound than to do the work that it takes and that's ahead of us. Are y'all tracking? So is it worth fighting for freedom? Right? They're going, no, it's not worth it. It would have been better for us to be enslaved to the Egyptians than to die right here. Right? And I love it. Now Moses is having like a moment of leadership. And how many of you know leadership is good, but most leaders don't get it right all the time? Yes? Hello, Alabama fans. DeBoer didn't get it right in week 1. Still a sore subject? Look, I didn't come to church last week because we got beat. That's a joke. That's a joke. But how many of you know he got it together this week? We smoked somebody. I don't know what high school we played, but we smoked them. Right, we did what we should have done to a team like that. But it's football season, so I want you to work yourself into this mentality for a second. So the captivity in Egypt, 400 years, that was the first half. Right, they walk out of captivity. Now, Moses is looking at everybody in the situation that they're in the middle of a rock and a hard place, in the middle of drowning if you try to cross, and in the middle of death if you just sit still. Right, so he's got to come up with an incredible halftime speech so that they can go back out and they can win the second half. So he goes, I got this. Now look at what he says. This is incredible. Verse 13, Moses said to the people, fear not. And I'm glad, I bet everybody there was going, this is the moment. Fear not. Stand firm and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will work for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you will only be silent. All you got to do is sit still, and God's got it. And I'm sure all of them went, yes, we're ready to fight. We're ready to fight. But there's a problem with leadership is Moses was a little bit like DeBoer going into first week. He didn't watch film. He didn't watch what happened during the first half, so he didn't know how to prepare him during the second half. It was a great speech. It was incredible. Awesome. But it's totally inappropriate for the moment. And I'll tell you why I say that. Look at verse 15. The Lord said to Moses, why are you crying to me? I find that funny. Why are you crying to me? Tell the people to do what? Tell the people to go forward. To which, as a leader, I'm going, do you not see what is in front of us and behind us? Do you not see that we're in like a predicament? There's a reason why I'm crying out to you. But God, the whole time, I'm pretty sure it doesn't say it in here, so this is the Eric Bradley version, so take it for what you will. I'm pretty sure the whole time God's talking to Moses going, hey, don't you think if I was going to free you from 400 years of captivity that I had a plan for when you got to a sea and in the middle of an army? Like when you got to in between a rock and a hard place, if I was going to set you free in the way that I set you free and all the miracles that I did to set you free, don't you think I had a plan for the moment that you got in between a rock and a hard place? Now, here's how it relates to us. The moment that you try to change that area of your life that you're just surviving into thriving, it's going to get really difficult. And you're going to go, I don't know that I can do it. I don't know that I got what it takes. I don't know. God, you can't use me in that way. There's no way that I can do that. And God's going, hey, don't you think if I called you to be a parent, then I would give you the wisdom that you need when you get in that situation where you feel like you don't know what you're doing? But yet we're still out here floundering like we got to have it all together. Right? Don't you think if you were addicted to that if I could set you free from that today, that 10 years from now you still don't have to go back to it, that my grace is still sufficient for you in the area of your weakness? And he's going, if I got you free then I can keep you free today. Right? And Moses is going, oh, okay, I got it now. My bad. I'm going to have to go back in the locker room, tell everybody that speech, it was awesome, it was good, but that's not what we should do. Right now, how many of you, like that in that moment, now what do we do? Well, you got to go forward. Verse 16, it says, lift up your staff, stretch out your arm over the sea and divide it, and then the people of Israel will go through on dry ground. And I just got a thought that if you don't get anything else out of today, here's what I want you to get out of today is thriving begins when trust becomes obedience. Thriving begins where trust becomes obedience. Because at the end of the day, you can say that you trust in God, but your actions speak louder than words. So at some point, my trust in God has to change how I respond to God. And when I respond to him in obedience, now thriving starts to take place in the area of my life that surviving used to exist. Right? Because he looks at Moses and he says, hey, go forward. What do? Sticks out his hand, parts the water. That's awesome. Right? But did that happen before or after Moses did what God told him to do? It happened after. So when God spoke to Moses and he says, hey, tell him to go forward, just take your stick that you got, point it at the water, tell it to part, it'll part, and everybody will walk through. Huh? Do you not? Some of y'all read the Bible too spiritually. Right? I read the Bible and I go, that's crazy. Like, how would I have responded if God would have said, hey, take that stick right there that you got in your hand, put it in that water, and it's going to part and you can walk across it? Yeah, right. Right, so in the moment where God told him to do something, there was still a sea in front of him, there was still an army behind him. Nothing had changed. But now his trust in God turned into obedience. And he took the step knowing that if he took a step and this failed, all of them were going to die. So he was only relying on the power of God. He stuck it over the water. It parted. They walked across. The army came chasing them down. The waters came back and killed them all. God's people are safe on the other side. See, obedience came before the blessing. And you and I survive in areas of our lives that we need to be thriving in, but we're not willing to take the obedience part. We want the blessing, but we're not willing to do the obedience that it takes to go in to the blessing. Now here's the specific area. Everybody with me? You good? Just do this if you're with me. You think it's a good idea to go from surviving to thriving? Okay, I had to get you to that point because the one area that I want to talk about in this series is the area of your money. See how I had to get you here? Because now you're going, oh, see, the church just wants your money. Look at me. This is for real. I'm not joking here. I don't want your money. I don't need your money. The church doesn't want your money. The church doesn't need your money. Are you tracking? Like, I need you to hear it from my heart to yours. If you apply today's message and you give to another church, then good. If it makes you live out in obedience what we're going to talk about today, I'm not in it for that. I don't need it for that. God's going to take care of this church, and he's going to take care of me. And at the end of the day, if you're just obedient, he'll take care of you too. And we're going to see that in just a second. But it's about this one area called the tithe. The tithe. What's that word mean? It just means a tenth. Like just tenth. Okay, now watch what Malachi says right here. Malachi chapter 3, verse 10 says, bring the full tithe into the storehouse that there may be food in my house. Bring the full tithe. So, okay, bring 10%. Okay, that's awesome. Now, which part of my money should this 10% come from? To be a true tithe, what part of it? Should it come from leftovers? Because here's the conversation I have with people all the time, is it's not that people don't want to tithe, it's that they look at their finances and they go, there's nothing left over for me to give. If I had any left over, then I would do that, but I can't do it because there's none here. But that's not a tithe. A tithe isn't meant to come off the end. It's not meant to come off the middle. It's meant to come off the top. It's the first. See? Proverbs chapter 3, verse 9, it says, honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits. With the first fruits. So 10%, yes, awesome, you got that. But what 10%? The first 10%. But then it goes on and it makes this statement. Then your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will be bursting with wine. Now here's what I know is we've been called a prosperity teaching church. We've been called a cult. We've been called a million different things. How many of you know that? This is not, you give God $1 and he'll take care of all your wildest dreams. That's not what this is. Tithing is trust becoming obedience. To do what God said to do to begin with, even if it doesn't look like it's something you should do to start with. Right, so he said then. So do you see the order? Right, there's obedience, then there's blessing. Honor the Lord with your wealth and the first fruits, then the promise will come. The blessing will come. Everybody tracking? You following along? I want to show you another part. Malachi chapter 3. Let's go back to it and let's read the whole thing. It says, bring the full tithe into the storehouse that there may be food in my house, and thereby put me to the test and see if I will not open the windows of heaven for you and pour down such a blessing until there is no more need. So there's two parts to this equation, is there not? There's the promise of God and the blessing of God, but then there's the obedience of his people. Right? So how do you and I thrive when it comes to our finances? Well, I'm not a financial advisor. Right? So I don't know. If you need to know how to thrive in every area of your finances, you need to get a financial advisor. But what I do know, just from walking with God for the time that I've walked with him and watching this trust turn into obedience and watching this area of my life turn into thriving, is I know the principle that he's talking about. So I want to help you and give you really 3 real practical tools. And then I'm going to end with a little story. 3 practical tools. You ready? Because if you can't use this message tomorrow, then you shouldn't have just came today. Right? You got to do something with it. Right? So how do you live this thing out? So 3 practical tools. Here's the first one. Is start by bringing the tithe. If you've been the person that just goes, well, I want to tithe, but I don't know how to bring him because I don't have anything left, that's because you're trying to look at it the wrong way. It's the first 10%. Well, do you know how big of a check that's going to be to have to write to the church? Yeah. It's the same percentage of the check that I write to the church. Right? It's the same one. But flip this in your mind for a second. Can we stop going, hey, do you know how big of a check that is to write to the church? And let's flip that and go, do you know how big of a check that is written to God? Because it's not about here. It's not about the name on the sign. It's not about us and our church. It's about God having your heart. The Bible says where your treasure is, there your heart is. He don't want your money. He wants your heart. But he has to get through your money to get to your heart. Are you tracking? Right? So just start bringing it. It's never going to be a good time. You're never not going to have more bills. You're always going to be in a pinch between a rock and a hard place. Between drowning in debt and creditors calling you, wanting what they have. There's still an obedience in the middle. Even when it looks like you shouldn't take the step. That God goes, honor me with your first fruits. So just start tithing. 10%, whatever you make, just start doing it. And here's the second way that you can do it is make generosity a habit, not a one-time event. Now so at Church With You, if you've been coming for any length of time, so we take one offering, like one special offering a year. And you should be grateful for that. right? Because back in the day, come on, I went to some churches. It was like the AC was broke and they passed the buckets and you put the money in, and it was like 3 guys came over here and counted, and they were going, it's not enough. Pass them again. And then they had to come back through at the end of service. Come on, we're not doing that. We'll figure out how to steward it the best way that we can through the month to take care of all that. But one time a year in December, right? The first weekend in December has always been just one offering to go, hey, listen, here's some things that God's putting in front of us that we can accomplish if we all go in together. Right? But here's the problem. If generosity is only a part of my life one time a year, then when we get to the first time in December, first Sunday in December, I go, oh no. Like I haven't prepared. And I want to give, but I ain't got nothing to give. Okay, so here's a little bit of into our lives for just a second. So just looking at scripture for a second, 10%, that's the tithe. My generosity doesn't start until after 10%. Is this making sense? Okay, because Malachi says bring the tithe. Let's say I take, you give me the keys to your truck for the week. I'm open to that too, by the way. If you got any cool cars, you just want somebody else to drive them, you let me know. Let's just say I get the keys and I come back to you. It says bring the tithe. I come back to you at the end of the week and your car's clean. It's filled up with gas, right? It's got a little money in the glove box, just says a thank you for letting me drive your cool car around for the deal. And I hand you your keys back and I go, hey, thank you so much. That's bring, right? Because it was yours to begin with. You let me have it for a minute. Now I'm bringing it back to you because it's your possession to begin with. Give would look like this. And this is how a lot of people see tithing. This is my giving, right? This is how giving would look. You give me the keys to your car that week, and then I bring it back to you ragged out, all the way on empty. And then I'm sitting here going, hey, I was just feeling generous this week, and I figured I'd bring you a truck. Here's the keys to it. You're welcome. Nobody in here is going, did you see what my pastor just did? He gave me a truck. Because it's your truck. It's yours to begin with. So if you give it to me to use for a little while, I can't give it back to you and call it generosity. Generosity starts after 10%. 11% on is generosity. So now what we do is we go, okay, well, 10%, there's the tithe. What do we want to give to Vision Builders at the end of the year? We go up a percentage. Right? And when we go up a percentage, here's how we started doing it is we'll give our tithe 10%, and then at the same time, I'll look at that certain percentage, figure out what the dollar needs to be, and then I'll give it to Vision Builders all throughout the year. Does this make sense? Then that way I can, the Bible says, each one of you should give as you have decided in your heart. Not under compulsion to give, but what you've decided through the Holy Spirit. Then I can just make sure it gets lived out. Right? It's not a one-time event. It's a lifestyle of living to be generous toward the kingdom of heaven. Now here's the third one is you got to build margin with discipline. If you're one of those that are going, I don't have any left over, well, now you need margin. And it's going to take some discipline to be able to tithe. But can I tell you, this goes way deeper than just your money. Some of you need to create margin in your schedules with discipline. Some of you need to create margin in your life with rest. See, what margin does is it just creates space for God to work. It's what tithing does. It creates space for God to work. It's what margin does in your relationships. It creates space for God to work. It's what God does in every area of your life. When you create space, you allow God to work. You don't take over everything and got everything else planned out. You're going, God, here's the area for you to work. Right, which leads me to this story, and I'm going to close with this, and then we're going to baptize some people. So I was reading the other day, and I read a story about this king that had a kingdom, and he ruled it justly and lovingly, and the kingdom turned out to be peaceful and prosperous, and it had everything it needed. Right? But then one time, the king figured out that something was being stolen from his kingdom. So he tried to figure out who it was, and they couldn't figure it out. So what he did, being the king, he said, hey, listen, here, the crime is theft. And what's going to happen is when we find the thief, the punishment for the crime is going to be 40 lashes. Now, 40 lashes back in the day was really like the king was going, hey, listen, the punishment for this thief is going to be the death penalty. right? So at the end of the day, here's what you found is they searched and searched and searched and still couldn't find it. And all of a sudden he found the thief. He found the thief. Now the punishment for the crime was the death penalty. But the person who did the crime was the king's daughter. So now every eye in the kingdom is looking, going, well, up to this point, the king has been just, but he's also been loving. How's this going to play out? And I'm sure you got people going, you know what, he's going to let his daughter off the hook. It's his daughter. He can't kill his daughter. That'd be unloving. Right? And if he doesn't kill his daughter, then that's not just. So he's stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's stuck between a sea and an army. And he says the crime has already been done. Now the punishment has to be given. And he looked at his daughter and he says, you got to endure the punishment. So they took his daughter and they strapped her to the whipping post, and the guards got ready, and he says, okay, deliver the blow. And the guards looking at the king's going, like, this is going to kill your daughter. So the guards raise the whip back, and the king says, stop. And everybody's going, see, he's going to let her off the hook. And the story goes that he stopped him, and he came over to his daughter, and he wrapped her up. And he says, okay, now deliver the blow. He created margin. And the guards looked at him, and he says, but I can't hit your daughter without hitting you. And he said, deliver the blow. The punishment has to be given out. So 40 lashes were given out, none of which hit the daughter. And at the end of the 40 lashes, they pulled the dead king off of his daughter. And they cut the ties around the daughter's arms, and she went off in freedom. Can I tell you, that's margin for God to work, but that's also the gospel. Do you know that that's what God did for you? For the wages of sin is, that's what you deserve, that's what I deserve. And God would not be just if he didn't punish sin. But he wouldn't be loving if he just took you out either. So he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. So in that moment, he looks at his one and only son, and he says, hey, I need you to go down. I need you to wrap them up. And I need you to take the death that they deserved so that they could live a life that they didn't deserve. And he came and he took a beating. And he carried his cross up the hill, and they nailed him to it. They lifted him up, and he died of suffocation. And then they took him down. They put him in the tomb. 3 days later, he came back to life, showing himself to a whole bunch of people so that you and I could get the ropes of bondage freed from our lives so that we could walk out in freedom. Come on, the old is gone and the new has come. So here's my question to you today, but that's still going to require some obedience, does it not? Salvation is free. You cannot earn it or purchase it. But the Bible says if you confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that God rose from the dead, then you'll be saved. Do you see a correlation with the passages that we read today? There's a promise from God in the passage. You will be saved. That's a promise. But there's also an obedience factor that comes before the promise. And the obedience factor is I'm going to confess with my mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in my heart that God raised him from the dead. Then, so in order to get the blessing, in order to get the promise, you and I got to walk through the obedience. So my question to you is, have you walked through the obedience? Have you looked at your life and went, there's no way I can save my own? Have you looked at what Jesus did on your behalf and went, I confess you as Lord. I believe in my heart that you were once dead, but you are now risen, and I receive your salvation. Has that been a decision that you've made in your life? And if it has, then that's incredible. If it hasn't, right now's the moment. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait for tonight. Right now's the moment. So would you bow your heads with me? Would you close your eyes right there where you sit? If you're here and you need a relationship with Jesus, we're going to live out some obedience first. And then you're going to receive a promise. If the promise is new life is yours. And the way to get it is through obedience and going, you are Lord, and I believe in you. That you took my punishment. You created margin in my life so that you would have space to work. If that's you and you need a relationship with Jesus this morning, would you do me a favor with nobody looking around? On the count of 3, I'm just going to count to 3. Right where you are, you just slip your hand up in there. We're not going to make you stand. We're not going to pull you down front. This is from your heart to God's. Just right where you are. All around the room. Are you ready? On 3, you just lift them up. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Put them in the air and just say, yeah, I need that. Keep them up for just a second so I can see you. Yeah. Come on, I just want to see you for a minute. Yeah. Come on, you can put them down. I'm going to lead you in a prayer. And we're going to pray the same prayer that we've just been talking about. If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, then you will be saved. That's a promise God gives, so we're going to live it out in obedience. So here's what I want you to do, right there underneath your breath. If that was your hand, if that was your heart, you just speak this out to God. And just tell him, you can just repeat after me. Say, Jesus, I believe in you. I believe you're the Son of God. I believe you came for me and you paid my debt so that I could walk into freedom. I believe you were once buried and you came back to life, sitting at the right hand of the Father. So I receive your forgiveness. I receive your salvation. Make me new. Help me live for you the best way I know how for the rest of my life.